eyes on the right one. Good evening.
Gloria Swanson is now 82. She's worked in the movie industry for most of her life and is one of Hollywood's greatest and most enduring stars. She was an independent woman in an era when they were seldom countenanced. At the age of 27, she turned down a Paramount contract for as much as $1.5 million to produce her own films for United Artists. Her biggest success as an independent producer was the first film version of Rain, made in the teeth of intense censorship. Her most famous disaster was the uncompleted epic Queen Kelly, extravagantly directed by Erich von Stroheim. Gloria Swanson is perhaps best known here for her role as the aging movie star in Sunset Boulevard, but her silent screen credits include several films she made for Cecil B. DeMille. The best remembered of them was Male and Female, in which she took the first DeMille bath on screen and was pawed by a lion. Another of her silent movies was a lavish version of Madame Sans-Gêne, made on location in France when that was a very unusual procedure. She made her latest film, Airport 75, 7 years ago. She's recently published her autobiography, Swanson on Swanson. So will you now please welcome the latest star in the literary firmament, Miss Gloria Swanson. Alice in Wonderland was told that the best way to tell a story was to begin at the beginning, go on to the end, and then stop. Well, for one thing, your story is a story without an end in view even.
Oh,
I think it would be interesting to start in the middle, just to be perverse. I was struck reading your book that by the moment when you say that while waiting for the results of the Academy Award voting and the year of Sunset Boulevard, you suddenly had looming over you this vision of the menace of Norma Desmond, that you felt, I'm never going to escape this. People will think that I am Norma Desmond and Norma Desmond is me. Would you like to tell us how, from your point of view, you and Norma Desmond differ?
There's one thing that was true in the picture, and that is that I always called Mr. DeMille, and he always called me young fellow. And I worked for him. The rest of it was pure nonsense as far as my life is concerned. I'm not a recluse. I'm not interested in the past. I don't have a Mr. Max as an ex-husband. I don't live like that. I never have. And I haven't anyone floating in a pool or in my bathtub. I don't carry a gun.
One of the things which is perhaps most misleading in the image that people would get or guess at your career from Sunset Boulevard is that I don't imagine that Norma Desmond could ever have been a comic star. I can't possibly imagine her being in comedy, and yet I've seen the most wonderful silent comedies that you're in. I think Manhandled, for instance, is a superb film. But I believe, in fact, that you did a lot of on-the-spot investigation as to how to build that character and how to do that, didn't you, in Manhandled?
Yes, I did. I worked, if you please, in a department store for a couple of days, putting cotton in my nose, apples in my cheeks, making different eyebrows and a different kind of mouth on my face, white makeup, and a blonde wig. And I really worked there. And I found that I wanted to find out how they felt about the customer. When I went up to the ladies' room and listened to the conversations up there, the women, and also in the dining room, it was fascinating. The best scene in that particular picture was made in the subway. And if you stand backstage sometimes and it's on the screen and I hear the audience, they're in gales of laughter. And today we need a lot of laughter, which we don't have enough of.
One of the things that strikes me about your early career is...
Can you remember back that far?
Well, from the films that I've seen, that you seem to have spent a lot of time fighting for what you thought was right for yourself and for the movies that you were in, and nearly always people wanted you to do whatever you'd been doing before. There was the era when you were the clothes horse and you wanted to play more real characters, you wanted to play characters like the girl in Manhandle.
Well, they learned that I had a mind of my own, and which I used, because in those days when you were a moneymaker, you could use it. They say, oh, yes, yes, of course, of course, of course. So I used it. It was true. When I left the mill, which I didn't want to do, and I told Mr. Lasky I didn't want to be a star on my own, I thought he was going to collapse. He'd never heard that one before. And then he called Mr. DeMille and said, talk to her. You know, she doesn't want to be a star. She wants to make pictures with you. So he said, young fellow, they can't put all their eggs in one basket. I'm a star, and you must be a star now on your own. But I said, He said, why? Tell me why. I said, I'm frightened. Why? Well, I said, I'll just be doing pseudo-DeMille pictures, that's all. And you know what happened? Each picture was exactly alike. The cast was different. And my train just got longer and longer in each picture. That's all. So that's when I said I refuse to be a clothes horse any longer.
In early Hollywood, it's remarkable the number of women who have played a very important part in not only starring in films, but in shaping things. And you obviously did your part in that. I remember also in your book...
No, I was the rebel.
Yeah, well, exactly.
I don't know if you shape things...
I think rebels often do the most important part of shaping things. It's the rebels that shape the future.
Well, maybe.
But you mentioned being very impressed when you met Clara Kimball Young, to think there is this woman who is actually ordering men about, that she knows what kind of films she wants to make. She is the head of her company with these other people, and they listen to what she says, and she talks business on an equal level and so on. But you don't seem to ever to have been terribly comfortable doing that yourself.
Well, she had problems, too, that we probably didn't hear about. Well, it was a man's world. And, of course, now it's changing a bit. Do you feel it?
But you certainly seem to have not only known what you wanted, but known, on the whole, what was best for you in making films. I mean, I think particularly of your version of Rain, Sadie Thompson, which was very much your baby from the outset. I know you lost control of it later on, but I mean, that was a case where you really fought through every stage in order to make that film, didn't you?
Well, it was censored, of course, and I can well understand that, because the language in the play, Rain, which was based on Somerset Maugham's short story called Sadie Thompson, was the first more or less outspoken thing even on the stage. Now, the reason that I think I finally sold it to Skank to make a talking picture of it. Well, they were at a disadvantage, only they didn't realize it. Because, can you imagine did any of you see Rain? Do you know the character? Well, she calls the Reverend Davidson the mealing mouth, blankety, blankety, blank, blank, blank. Now, can you imagine having to say in a talking picture, you naughty boy, and smacking it? How can you react to that? So I had the advantage of being able to use real dialogue and get a performance out of it. So the ones that followed and did it as a motion picture, like Crawford, she was at a tremendous disadvantage doing a talking picture because she couldn't use the words. It's like doing a love scene and saying A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You know, you couldn't do it very well.
And you say even in silent days, when something was in censorship trouble like that, they would get people in to read the lips of the actors to see if they were saying something terrible, even if you couldn't hear what they were saying.
Well, you know, they were very fussy about the fact that if you forgot part of your speech, whatever it was, didn't matter if it was in the center, but the first words had to be perfect and the last words, because they would take the center out anyway and put a big title in, and they could change the whole story as a matter of fact.
Now, you were certainly one of the stars who was not at all fazed by the coming of sound. Were you very worried in prospect by making a talkie after making silent movies, or did you just accept it naturally?
No, I was excited about the possibility of talking pictures. I thought it was about time.
How did you feel when you first played a role on stage? Because I remember that you wanted to do it out of New York. You didn't want to start in New York.
I was tricked into doing a stage play because I had threatened everybody I would. And in fact, the night that it opened, you could have stuck hat-pins in me and I wouldn't have felt them. I was numb. They were nauseated. They were, throwing up and everything else backstage because they knew they were going to get on the stage with a total amateur and I was going to mess everything up. Then, just before I went on, they said, Eleanor Roosevelt's in the audience. Now that's a wicked thing to say to anybody. So-and-so's in the audience. So they were on stage and I made my entrance. I opened my mouth and I heard my own voice. And in 2 seconds I was a ham. I was so, they were so frightened, so shocked at this, the cast, that they forgot their lines and I was cueing them. Before I knew it, I felt I belonged up there, and that's how I happened to get on the stage. And I must say that I think, in a way, Norma Desmond in some way benefited by the different technique and the different approach and what I learned from the audience, because you teach us a great many things. That's why when youngsters say, where shall I go to a school to learn acting? I said, no, the best school in the world is on the stage. And all your teachers will be sitting out there, and start on comedy, because that's the most difficult and the most delicate. And you're constantly treading on thin ice. And if you're wrong, you'll know it quickly.
Well, I think it's about time we open this to members of the audience. Any questions?
Now, my life's an open book, so go ahead.
I'd like to ask Miss Swanson a number of questions about Queen Kelly. Anything she can tell us about the production will be interesting, but the main thing is, can she tell us finally who shot the last scene, the death of the prince?
When I finally made, in place of Queen Kelly, I did my first talking picture, The Trespasser, we put the Kelly on the shelf with it. The idea was someday that we would be able to use the material. And in those days, there were not very many theaters that had equipment to show talking pictures, and especially in Europe and especially in South America. So to try and retrieve some of the money that had spent on it and not knowing how to get it back, I put a little ending to it where she's dead and the prince kills himself. to be able to send this out and get some revenue from it, which is the reason for that ending. Otherwise, there would be no purpose in it. But because he had shot so much film, we had 20,000 feet of film, which we knew in the beginning, if you read the script, would have to be cut down to about 3,000 feet. So there would have been 17,000 feet on the cutting room floor. This is one of the reasons I walked off the set and stopped him, because von Stroheim had no sense of time and money or anything else.
Remember Andy Warhol once telling me something which opened fascinating possibilities. He said that he'd met you in New York and had said, it would be wonderful if you would appear in one of his films. And you said, no, you didn't think you would like to appear in one, but you were fascinated by the way that they made them, which was so like the very earliest days of filmmaking when everybody took a hand. And you said you would actually love to direct one. So I said, well, you must make her direct one. But I don't think he ever managed to get you to do that. But would you like to direct a film?
No, when you work for DeMille, he had the cast in, he read the play, the picture rather, the script, and then that was the end of the script. You didn't take a script home at all, and that was it. Now that was totally different. Then when I went out on my own, and I made pictures away from him, and started my 5-year contract with Paramount, we had Sam Wood as the director. We had a writer, Catajon. Oh, these names are coming to me. Catajon was his name, the writer, and Jimmy, somebody else, once in a while. The same cameraman, and the same crew. It was like a stock company. Now, naturally, I was in on all of this, so I was a party too and making suggestions. Because if you're creative and if you're interested in the whole spectrum of the making of a picture, for instance, you couldn't hand me a script and expect me to do it. I'd have to know why, when, where. I have to delve into it. I have to be a part of it. I have to know the character I'm doing. And that is because that's the way my career went. And because I have an insatiable curiosity, when I'd go and see the rushes, I'd say, well, what were those blisters? Well, that was in the negative. Oh, was it really? Well, or that was in the printing. Then I'd go over to the laboratory and want to know about it. Then I'd watch the cameraman, the film. You see, I don't have this long nose for nothing. I have to know. I'm in everything. How do you do it? Well, let me see you do it. In other words, if you can do it, why can't I?
Of all the directors that you've worked with, I know you admire Cecil B. DeMille very much. Are there any others you'd like to tell us about that you admire very much as well?
You know, having had quite a long career out there, I had very few directors because I made 10 pictures with Sam Wood. So that was half my contract. When I then went to New York, I was to make another 10 pictures. Well, I made Madame Saint-Jean in Paris with Léonce Perry, only the one picture. And he was his wife was always telling him that he hurt my feelings, and he was forever apologizing to me for something what I didn't know. So that was our only kind of contact, really. Then I did a picture called A Hummingbird that was by another director. But the rest of them were really Alan Dwan. The directors that I had were more like maestros. They conducted. They didn't tell you. I can remember DeMille, when somebody said to him, Mr. DeMille, will you show me how you want me to do this scene? I was standing next to DeMille, and he looked at him, and when he looked at you, he looked through you. He said, I am not running an acting school. I hired you as an actor. Act! So he never told you how to do a scene.
Gentleman over here.
Hello, Miss Swanson.
Hello.
Over Christmas, we saw one of your most recent films, Airport 75, on British television, in which you played yourself.
That's the hardest thing in the world to do.
I was going to ask you about that, yes. What was that like?
I had turned the script down, and I don't know if you know the producer, but Mr. Fry, Bill Fry, arrived with a director by the name of Smith. And guess who else? Edith Head. Edith Head, the designer, with a big pad, drawing pad. So they arrived in my library, and they start on me. And I said, but look, why do actors and actresses always have to be such nuts and so crazy? They're either drunkards or they're temperamental. Why don't you show an actress, look, I'm a normal person. Now, really, I am. Why can't they just be natural and normal? Well, they said, why don't you play yourself? So I said, well, yes. Then they said, you have to change all the dialogue. I said, well, I'd say thus and so, and this is how the script was written for me, that part. But you want to know something? You have no idea how you walk. You have no idea what your gestures are. You have no idea what your intonations are. You know practically nothing about yourself. You're so busy, you know, watching other people. And so it becomes, now I wonder how I would do that if I were to do that. You know, and it's, in a way, it's a weird feeling. So that's how that was done. But I had a ball on it. I had a lot of fun.
Which of your films is your own favorite, and are you planning to make any more films?
Well, you know, you have your favorites as you go along, just as you do even in life, with people or places. And when I was doing Madame Saint-Jean in Paris, it was an extraordinary experience, and one of I have great fondness for the whole thing that happened. But that's that. Then the thing that stands out mostly, of course, is the fact that when I made Sunset Boulevard, I used to sing all the way to the studio when I'm driving myself. It was so full of love on that set that you could feel it. They wrapped me in cotton. They, you know, I was almost like DeMille. I'd start to sit down and there'd be a chair shoved under me. It was extraordinary. It was such a loving experience. And it was 12 weeks, and that was the longest picture I'd ever made. 12 weeks is a long time. And I can remember coming down the stairs in the last scene of the picture, because we shot it chronologically. Well, that we did, because it was almost written as we went along. And when the last scene happened, I just stood there and wept, cried, and said, I want to do it all over again. Can we start tomorrow? That's the way I felt about it. Do you know what I'm going to talk about the night that they ran it at the studio? The picture was finished, and all, you know, there's a certain current about it. It's going to be a great picture. It's going to be great. There was that kind of talk. Well, sometimes that happens, and maybe it doesn't turn out quite that way. All right, so now the picture's going to be run in the studio, and it holds, I don't know, maybe 100 people, 100, 200 people. And we'd had a dinner party, and we all traipsed in, and all the moguls, Louis B. Mayer, why he was there, I don't know, but he was, and Mr. Harry Cohn, and the head of Warner, and this and that, and the writers, and so on and so forth, and all the actors that you can imagine that you've heard of in California. And now, remember, this is 30 years ago when they were alive. We couldn't do it today. So the picture went on, and the picture finished, and there was such a dead silence that it was frightening. You could hear it. It was terrible. And then all of a sudden they went wild. And they carried on, and we're trying to get out, and everybody's grabbing you and kissing you and hugging you and carrying on and taking care. And finally I said, well, I saw Mary Pickford here. Where is she? Well, she won't come out because her face is all swollen from crying. Where's so-and-so? Well, she ran up. She was hysterical. Where's so-and-so? And literally, somebody picked up the hem of my skirt and kissed her. Now, you know, this is a little too much. And I thought, what in God's name is going on here? Why are they acting like this? You know, that picture gave every actor in that audience hope. I hadn't made a picture in 9 years. It had nothing to do with what they saw on the screen. It had to do because actors live in such fear of what the next picture is going to be like. And so they thought, well, if she can do it and continue on after 9 years, fine. So that's what happened. They felt there was hope for them, and I'm sure that it saved many of them sleepless nights.
Hey, Miss Desmond! Miss Desmond! It's me! It's Hawkeye!
Hello, Olga.